I've got some notes prepared here, but I'll read some stuff just through the hat here. Number one, I did observe that as the proceedings ended, things got fierier and fierier. That is a mark of the success of our proceedings, don't you think so? Yes, thank you very much. I can't wade into the actual proceedings just now. I was very tempted to intervene, but since I'm going to be the one giving the closing remarks, it'd be pretty unfair because I would have the very last word and nobody else has a chance to respond. But I was very taken up by Julian's take on the UNCLOS thing because that was mentioned by the Prime Minister. I think what Julian raised is a very important issue, but the forum here is quite insufficient to accommodate for the time for that kind of discussion. Really, it's really a jurisprudential issue. Whereas we are dealing with geopolitics. In geopolitics, you have to have a referential point. And I believe the referential point has to be some kind of law that is being agreed upon, even though it may only be ostensible. Otherwise, it will be complete chaos. So to that extent, will be my remark on that. Of course, there will also be a reply. When you get a bunch of lawyers in to talk about law, there'll be no end to it because the lawyers are the only one who can turn, like white into black. So let's skip that part. I'm speaking as a lawyer myself here. But that is a very interesting question. Perhaps ISIS itself could raise the issue. South China Sea, is it jurisprudence or is it geopolitics? That's a very interesting topic. Now, we've got quite a bit here, so I'm going to, since this is towards the end, I will go through a list of things that we've got here as a kind of a summary, although I do not profess to be able to do justice to the entire proceedings. Number one, let me just begin with a couple of notes that's already prepared here. Now, after 2 days of conferencing, and actually including the night that we had before, we have finally come to the end of the 36th Asia-Pacific Roundtable. All good things must come to an end, as they say, but as long as we end on a high note, we can even go higher the next round. I hope that the discussions in our 5 plenary and the 2 concurrent sessions have been as beneficial to you, and it certainly has been to me. We heard from and engaged with the Prime Minister just this morning when he delivered the keynote. It wouldn't do justice for me to summarize his statement, his keynote, and that's already out in the ISIS website, should you care to go back to the actual recording as well as the text itself. I could just say that in his remarks, he outlined the foundations. I think that's the key point here. Not just a soundbite, but it's a real point. The foundations of a new consensus for global security order and the regional architecture. Indeed, as we say, ideals are the stars by which, the mariners guide their path, even though they may not reach the stars. But I think that is some way that we could get ourselves into a right direction. This is paramount given the adverse impacts of current polemics to existing mechanisms and frameworks and the growing bifurcation across almost all sectors. Now, we started our plenary sessions yesterday with an extremely engaging and informative discussion on the China-US rivalry. I think this will be going down to quite a bit in terms of traction, and we hope that this will generate further discourse. But the key takeaways are that while conflict is not inevitable, it is becoming more plausible. That is a bit scary, I believe, but as you say, reality bites hard. Uncertainty on the trajectory has seen all parties to reevaluate their roles and strategies to ensure that the prevention of stability becomes paramount. The so-called the preservation of stability becomes paramount. All said, indeed, there is a need for enhanced dialogue. That goes without saying. The implementation of crisis management mechanisms and among the most ideal part, which is the establishment of trust. Plenary 2, which discussed the evolution of the Indo-Pacific, revealed several lines of thought. At its very core, strategic uncertainties, national interests, and threat perceptions have influenced the development of Indo-Pacific strategies. These strategies also serve as a tool for targeted cooperation. An interesting takeaway, among others, is that the Pacific, quote-unquote Pacific, the Pacific aspect of the Indo-Pacific is rarely discussed and is disconnected from the actual well-being of the Pacific region. So this gives us pause to really go further into that when we deep dive. That could also be a mini forum that we can go into. We are looking perhaps sometime in the early part of next year. The third plenary discussed recent developments in Southeast Asia, instigated by the ever sharp and witty Pak Yusof. Pak Yusof, are you around? Okay, I was hoping that you could hear this, because I really believe that it was well instigated. The past and present in Southeast Asia defies simplistic containment. I was the tip of my tongue to say that when that question was raised, how should ASEAN be able to come to a resolution? And I kind of agree that ASEAN as a geopolitical entity is meant to be able to cement people together in order they to have a discourse. But it is not a problem solver by itself. It could be a force, to my mind, in the geopolitical context, to have a bit more influence in relation to the global situation. But as a last resort for resolution, it could be a little bit too idealistic. Okay, let me just repeat. The past and present in Southeast Asia defies simplistic containment because these matters transcend borders. Regional ramifications can destabilize neighbors and threaten further fragmentation of ASEAN. That is the take that I get from the discourse that went on. Hence, inclusive dialogue and considerations of the human factor is imperative for long-term solutions. Number 4, the fourth plenary was immensely insightful on trade and investment amid the geopolitical rivalry. There is a general realization and, of course, anxiety that the world is moving to a new phase of geoeconomics, where economics and geopolitics are increasingly intertwined. The exclusion-inclusion principle will have significant geopolitical impacts to regional trade frameworks. ASEAN, in particular, needs to know how to maneuver around that. Now, for the fifth plenary, I think I might be trying to reinvent the wheel here by trying to summarize it. So I'm actually going to skip it because it's all fresh in our minds what went on. So I will go straight down to taking the closure here. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, esteemed participants, I just want to record again our profound appreciation for all of you, the instigators, the moderators, the panelists, the plenary speakers, for this very substantive proceeding that we've had for these 2 days. And I would like to call on you to join in a show of appreciation, please. Thank you very much. Well, I'm not about to sing Auld Lang Syne, but let me just say this. Ladies and gentlemen, as we bring the 36th APR to an end, I would like to reiterate our thanks to Their Excellencies Michaelis Rojas, Ambassador and Head of the European Union Delegation to Malaysia, Ouyang Eugene, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China in Malaysia, for their insights in the lunch and dinner remarks yesterday. And of course, just this afternoon, our thanks to Dr. Stephen, a visiting senior official at the Australian High Commission who spoke earlier. Allow me also to extend our deepest appreciation to our partners who have made it possible for us to convene the 36th Asia-Pacific Roundtable. Again, I will repeat, I think, like I've said, all good things bear repetition. The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the delegation of the European Union to Malaysia, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and the Embassy of Japan in Malaysia, and Embassy of the United States. The generous contributions and belief in the value and utility of the Asia-Pacific Roundtable as a regional Track 2 forum of consequence have once again made it possible for us to successfully convene this conference. Finally, I would like to express my thanks to my colleagues at ISIS Malaysia who have worked tirelessly and with limited means to ensure the successful return of an in-person APR this year. As a final note, here's a bit of selling coming on here, and I hope you bear with me. It's just a pretty short sentence here. I extend an invitation to all of you to participate in our next upcoming big-ticket event, known as Praxis, ISIS Malaysia's flagship conference directed at policymakers and decision makers as well. It will take place on October 24th. Praxis's central tenet is based on translating theory and knowledge into practice. Finally, whereas ISIS Malaysia's Asia-Pacific Roundtable is focused on issues in the international arena, Praxis is a conference focused on issues of national strategic importance, and that does not preclude the participation of international participants like all of you here. We do this by developing and mainstreaming better policy ideas, creating impact by shaping discourse, and securing buy-in from policymakers and decision makers. With the theme of advancing Malaysia's strategic interests, Praxis will cover a range of policy topics including food security, building a nature-positive economy, the care economy, and the semiconductor industry. So we look forward to meeting all of you on this occasion later this year. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for those flying back home. I wish you all a safe and pleasant trip, and I look forward to meeting you all once again very soon. Thank you.